What do you do when your head is blown, my friends? We experience in our lives shipwrecks. We experience times when we get thrown off. How is it that we recenter ourselves, collect ourselves, and not react, but instead act? We're going to go through that today in the book of Acts. I'm Pastor John from Livingstone's and Sunland, Tujunga Seventh-day Adventist Churches, and it is time for the call to prayer. As you discovered, and as we all experienced last week, we were talking about the shipwrecking of our lives. Paul and all of these people, all of these men on the ship, 276 of them to be exact. That's a big vessel from Alexandria that didn't understand. You remember this? The ship captains were trying to get off the ship and run away, and everybody's trying to go different directions because those captains didn't understand the seas that Paul understood, but they wouldn't listen to him. Now they're listening to him. The only problem is they're stuck in the middle of the storm, in the middle of the night. And there's shores that are unrecognizable. This is in chapter 27, starting with verse 32. The soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboats and let them drift away. Remember that? Because the sailors were trying to run. Nowhere to go. Paul said that Jesus came to him and told him that everyone on the ship would survive. Don't be afraid. But a lot of people don't believe in Jesus and they don't believe Paul. He's a prisoner. Why in the world are you going to believe him? Well, God. The funny thing is God deals with not the outside, but the inside. Don't look at the outside to find out whether someone knows what they're doing. Look on the inside. Look at their actions, not what people say about them. Okay? So, we continue on. So just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. Now the reason why he's urging them to eat is they're about to throw all the grain off the sides of the heaviest part of the trip of the cargo is the food, the grain that was transferring. They were going to be transferring it from Alexandria up toward Spain area to get to then eventually to Rome. But forget about it. So remember, this is a cargo ship with food and prisoners and then a whole bunch of other people trying to go from point A to point B. Many of them, as it always is with ships, you connect and then you go out and then you connect again, and there's different lock. It's just like flights. When you fly to Rome, if you're direct flight, that's nice, but oftentimes you do a flight and you will land. I remember when we went to Italy, we went via Moscow. So we landed in Moscow and then on to Rome. So that's how these ships work. They go from one port to the next until they get to the final port. The heaviest weight that's in the ship was the grain. They're about to throw it off, so Paul decided to collect everyone. And this has been a very stressful thing. Here, let's read the kind of stress coming out of this. And you may have experienced something like this in your life. Just before dawn, Paul urged them to eat. For the last 14 days, he said, you have been in constant suspense and without food. 2 weeks in a storm, horrible storm, on and off. They didn't know where they were. They see the beaches. They can't even see any beaches. They don't see anything. They don't know what's going to eat them out there, right? You've been in constant suspense. You haven't eaten anything. Now I urge you, take some food. You need to survive, he says. Not one of you will lose even a single hair on your head, Paul says. Notice he didn't say none of you are going to have your hair turn white. He didn't say that. I think my hair would be all white after this experience. But not a single one of you will lose a hair from your head. even though I'm losing hair from my head, Paul says you're not going to lose hair on your head. You're going to be okay. After he said this, he took some bread. He gave thanks to God. And in front of them all, he broke it and they began to eat. This language is interesting. It's like communion language. And that makes me think. When we are going through terrible circumstances, difficult times, stress, we push and pull and rip like the animal that is getting attacked. We turn and we get angry, or we fight or we flight. All us human beings are alike in that way. We use different ways, we use tactics, but in the end, we act just like the animals. Fight or flight. But there's one thing that God gave us. It is self-awareness, the frontal lobe, the ability to see beyond what we're experiencing, make decisions, and look for something better, another way. When we're self-aware, we're able to stop, pull in, and give ourselves to something bigger than just our survival. God doesn't want us to survive, but without the ability to look beyond, we're unable to thrive. These men in the ship, they were hand to mouth, eat. And when they're scared, they can't eat. It's only about the next fun. And these are sailors. Where's the next girl I'm going to find? Where's the next fun I'm going to find? Where's the next booze I'm going to find? Where's my next food? That is what this world teaches us to do. It's evil and it destroys us. Instead, we need to learn to have something bigger in our lives, to look beyond. Paul shared a very messianic, a Jesus-centric communion with them. They ate together. Stop thinking about death. But if we die, we're going to be okay. But Jesus promised us that not one of you would die. Listen to me now, Paul says. Then they threw all of that overboard. They took all the rest of the grain and threw it overboard to lighten the ship up so it's not so deep and not going to turn over. There were 276 people on board. It lightened the ship. And when daylight came, verse 30, 39, they did not recognize the land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach, and they decided to run the ship aground. And they started cutting loose the anchors. And they moved the ship, but then it got caught on a sandbar, and it started to turn like this. The Roman soldiers, of course, there's about 10 or 20 prisoners with Paul. Immediately they said, okay, we're gonna have to kill all the prisoners because they're gonna run away. So immediately they start planning to do that, but the centurion says, stop, don't do it, because he didn't want Paul to die. Paul had shown something to this centurion. My friends, all of those soldiers were spared. They all had to jump into the water. It was freezing cold. And they headed to the shores of Malta. When they got to that shore, they were alive. They may not be fun, but they were alive. My friends, Jesus wants us to center ourselves. We must learn to look into the eye of the storm and do not fear it. It's hard. I know it's hard to do, but do not fear it, for God has us. Even if I die, he has me. But Jesus had promised Paul that they would not die. Those guys had to learn faith. Faith pushes fear out. Fear, overwhelming fear, will push out our ability to have faith. We must learn to center ourselves. We must learn to go back to step one, the first love. Jesus has called us to a first love. Paul reminds us today that in the midst of the typhoons and the storms, we need to give thanks. We need to change. We are the way out of the situation through us connecting with God. He's the leader, but we must believe and act on that belief, not go fight or flight. I'm so glad you're here with me, and in the next few minutes, it's almost 7:15, so it's time for intercession. Don't forget, smash the like button, like, subscribe, become a part of this channel, whether you're on Instagram or whether you're on Facebook, the two Facebook sites, Livingstone, Sunland, Tonga, or YouTube. Be a part of this. Be a part of the mission. And come to church here. We're going to be together. And with you and me together, God, you and I, makes anything possible. God bless you, and we'll see you in a few moments.